When the Game of Thrones ended a few years ago, I remember I had continuous dreams about the show, where I was always one of the characters in the series, and I would relive the life that I had been portraying in the show, and it was all so surreal. I would be sometimes Clegane, or sometimes I would be Bran Stark, and sometimes I was Jon Snow, and sometimes even the White Walker King, and every time the scenarios were similar to the one they lived. I remember the days were so horrifying, most of them while there were glimpses of some pleasant days when the princesses and the beautiful women of the show would also bless the dreams. It kept on happening until I started obsessing with another show. It was probably Money Heist. I remember waking up all scared because I would wake up with the dream of being a thief and always being on the run. Every time a big show ends, it triggers my obsession, and it begins. It was quite a dilemma that it left me everything the show ended. I tried to not hyper-obsess about the shows, but failed every time. And then it happened. When the new show began, it was the House of the Dragons, and I remember how it all went off the rails when the show started, and it was only started yet. And there is so much more that is yet to come, and I worry what it would do to me. Because at the intensity of which everything happened in the last couple of days, I don't think I was going to watch this show. It all happened when the pilot of the show House of Dragons was released. As the obsessive person I am, and the love I had for the Game of Thrones, it was quite plausible that I would directly switch to the House of Dragons without blinking an eye, and I did. I remember I did every preparation I had to for the show. I even binged the last season of Game of Thrones, however terrible it may have been, and got ready to witness the same excitement we had at the beginning of Game of Thrones. And as I did get ready, I saw that reviews were raving about how brilliant the show is and could even be better than Game of Thrones. And I was pretty sure if that was the case, I will be obsessing over this show hard. I remember the moment I clicked on the show, there were goosebumps all over me. And by the time the show ended, I was already out of my chair and out jumping and squatting and putting my hand on my forehead in disappointment. And then on my mouth in wonder. There was so much and so many emotions in the moment I saw the dragons. The very exact moment that I saw the dragons, I got stuck for a moment. As if I was them. As if they were real and they were in front of me. And I admired them and looked at them in wonder. The episode ended, and by the time it ended, I was in the euphoria of amazement and already imagining the different scenarios of the same episode, and I slept imagining the show. I woke up in the hospital bed. Now people would find it absurd, but I think my landing in hospital had to do with the dream. What happened was the night that I saw the House of Dragons, I dreamt something that made me land in the hospital. And when I recall my dream, everyone got what I was on about. In my dream, I imagined the throne room, and I was in one of the House of Dragons episode, and I wasn't sure what I was until later. I was seeing everything that was happening around, but my vision was different than everyone else's, and I felt like I was huge in front of those tiny humans of the House of Dragons. As I tried to grasp of what was happening, I looked around, and I understood. I was the dragon from the House of Dragon. I was standing tall and fierce and remarkably powerful, and I remember my first instinct was clearly flying. With the queen on my back, I remember I was flying without any worry and with great stealth. And then the queen left me on the top of the castle and left, and I wanted to come down, yet she had told me to not get down. But on the same hand of being a dragon in the dream, I was also me, and aware of that I am the dragon. And as I refused to follow the order of the queen, I took a big leap from the castle. And as I did, I soared high down into the oblivion and spread my wings to take the flight. And then thud, there was a loud noise. And next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital. My father told me that I jumped from the roof of my house and broke my leg. Every time I tell them the thing about my dream, they refuse to believe me and are kind of tilting toward calling me insane. And to be honest, I believe I'm a bit insane to hyper-obsess about shows. I wonder what I would do if I watched the full season. I'm too scared to find out what will happen. So I'm giving television a rest for some months now. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. The Nordic establishment that were by the riverside believed in the myth of the dragons. They believed that dragons existed, and it wasn't based on any evidence, but based on the texts and scrolls they found in the river one day. They were the first Nordic establishments to see the scrolls of the flying lizard. The fire was added later. This story is of the very first Nordic ruler that has no record of his existence in the history, Slock, the rebel. Slock rose to power and became the very first Nordic ruler, but he wasn't always the ruler. Everyone thought he was. Slock was a slave brought by a young landowner of the Luneta colony. He was tortured and raped in the Luneta camp by the Luneta men and women. His eyes looked as if they were the seas and their hairs like it was the darkest of the space, and brown skin that could defeat a tiger. He grew up in the Luneta colony, bought as a slave and molested. He first came to power when he slept with the wife of the Luneta chief, and then later beheaded the chief and married the wife. He, along with other Luneta, marched and fought the closest colony to him. After winning that war, he killed every Luneta soldier to get rid of his past and left the Luneta wife to the new army. Establishing his dominance in all the colonies, he married and bedded every single wife and woman of power he found, and later moved all the way to the shores of Nordonia, where the sea met the sky, and end of the earth was presumed. Bewildered in glory in his name, he set sail to the edge, and instead of filling, he found the Nordic land. There, a minute group of humans that looked white roamed freely naked, eloping like wild animals, and nothing but smiles and grins on their faces. Slock quickly established his greater kingdom in those parts and never returned to the Americania. One morning, to celebrate this newfoundland, they gathered all the gifts he had been receiving in the celebration, and there, an uninvited guest, a vagabond out of sea, came in with the gift for the ruler. Slock was much curious about the gift and decided to look into it. And there, it was a drawing of a flying lizard. He was so excited about the drawing that he ordered the vagabond to set on the adventure with him to find this creature who looks like a lizard and can fly. He said, "Let us set course to find the creature." And the vagabond gladly accepted. As he was waiting for the offer, the man took the essential and left with only one goal: to find this creature with Slock. Slock was as furious a warrior as people have imagined him to be. There was no way he would accept defeat and get back and do nothing. He set on the course, trailing through the most difficult and icy trails a man can set course for, and he kept going on. And then, the most difficult turn that they had to do as they reached the final mark on the map. They realized there is nothing moving forward, and there was only one viable option, and that was to return. The vagabond showed the map and said, "This is the end, my king. The creature hides in the cave in this volcano, and there seems to be no way us mortals can bear the hot fury of earth." And he continued, "Not all adventures can come to fruition. We will tell the world, my king, that we were unable to find the creature." And then Slock answered with the most enthusiasm and grit, "We are not turning back. There is no way that I'm going to let a mere volcano come in my way of glory and looking at that beautiful creature with my own eye." And as he said that, he stripped all his clothes and jumped into the volcano. And as he jumped, the vagabond went back to said that Slock is no more. It was all a ruse by the vagabond. He was the eldest son of the chief of Uneta colony, trying to seek revenge upon Slock. And then, as he did, he throned himself the king, for he was the one bearing the king's robe and crown. Meanwhile, everyone mourned Slock. Slock was alive in the corner of the volcano, trying to look for the creature for himself. And there, as he jumped over the edge to another cave-like window across, he saw in front of him a woman, naked and golden. And she approached Slock, and she asked, "What has brought you here, mortal?" And as she walked, Slock was mesmerized by her beauty, but was too smart to be blinded, and he replied, "In search of the truth." And the woman asked, "What is truth?" And he looked her in the eye and got closer to her and whispered, "That you are beautiful." And as he did, the woman in gold smiled and got closer, and they locked eyes with each other, and soon eloped. And as they both eloped, they turned into the dragons, and then in mere seconds back to the human form. And this all made him wonder everything. And then the golden woman revealed herself to be the dragon, and showcased the real power she holds. She chose Slock the first time she saw her, while she was flying through the Uneta colony, and knew that he would be the one to rule the world not seen by the mortals, to be the Dragon King, and to be the one to make the House of Dragons bigger. Slock had to leave the earthly possessions, and he did, as he married the Dragon Queen. It is said they eloped for a century, and then had the young dragons. The House of Dragons still stands strong away from the mortal world, in a hidden world beneath the volcanoes. I saw Stranger Things, and we often do think the way things are portrayed, but the reality is something completely different. Stranger Things is a great show with really dark themes and powers and science fiction, but what it doesn't know is how close it is to the reality of everything, and how close we are to prove them right. When the universe was created, everything was split, and so did everything in its splitting image, in order to make it simpler. Yes, the multiverse does exist, but it is not something like what films have portrayed. How do I know that? Well, because I have traveled to one called Myuu 033, or as we call it, the Upside Down. The thing with this universe is that it is just beneath our universe, and so is basically a splitting image of our universe. But the only thing that it does not have is light. Even though this universe is basically a replica of our universe, it is completely dark. And we stumbled across it while we were dabbling out with some equations, and one with right time proved out to circulate this in quantum experiments, and I, along with 3 other scientists, toggled along the ride by the quantum bridge. The quantum bridge is the bridge between our universe and the Upside Down, and for now, it is closed. We started this experiment back in 2012, and the first success came in 2020, when us, my team and I, hung around the quantum bridge and found this universe. Upon fiddling with it, we found that there is a complete absence of light in there, so we assume it to be a lonely universe, not sacred to life. So we decided to take a peek. And as we did, we saw that the complete formation was built around darkness. And slowly, we felt like we were being consumed by it. A week into the mission, I ordered to abort it. It was too risky without probable means of light and contact. And as we were rushed back, a dark wave of fog started chasing us, and there were presence of something dark that we could feel. We panicked and started running when one of our field scientists was engulfed by it. And sooner, it manifested the physicality and knowledge, and everything almost as if the life was thriving from that sinister manifestation. And it did. and then it engulfed another one of our scientists. It was me and Julie who made it out alive, but what still scares us, the extraction of knowledge it did from the scientists. Because when we were escaping, the dark engulfed scientist said, "We will find a way." The quantum bridge was shut, and we escaped narrowly. Now, they have the knowledge of those brilliant scientists we lost. Now, though they have no idea of building a functional quantum bridge, they do know their science, and will figure out a way to cross. But till then, we are on a tight clock to protect ourselves from them. And shows like Stranger Things give me a hope of victory we might just get. Last year, after a blissful first year of living in a new apartment, all on my own for the first time, a man moved in next door that I will never forget. The layout of the apartment is crucial to understand this incident, so I made a little diagram floor plan taken from the closest thing I could find online and edited. The most important part is that my balcony and his balcony are only partially separated by a wall, and there is a solid 2-foot gap in which you can easily walk from one to the other. For context, I previously had a very lonely woman living next door for the entire first year I lived there, who never crossed this balcony threshold without being explicitly invited. I only throw this in there so you can understand I wasn't previously concerned about someone infiltrating my space. The first time I met this new neighbor, and he was unloading groceries from his massive truck into the assigned parking spot next to mine. As I was driving up, he and a girl I assumed to be his girlfriend were unloading boxes from Costco. I noticed them speaking, and as soon as I was out of the car, they went silent. I nodded to them, proceeded to the elevator, and the guy ran up behind me, threw some boxes down, and begged me to wait. No problem, I'm a good neighbor. While in the elevator, the girlfriend refuses to make eye contact or speak to me. A little weird, but I just thought she was shy. But he quickly introduced himself and was extremely chatty. In the 45 seconds it takes to get the floor where our apartments are, he asked how I liked the place, where I was from, and where I worked. Looking back, his enthusiasm was a little strange, but I chalked it up to him being excited to be in a new place. For the sake of the rest of this story, we'll call him Sam. Sam was maybe 33, 6 foot tall, with a slim muscular build, and had hair bust extremely short as if the mask is balding. Pretty average looking by all accounts. The first few weeks we run into each other often, and always make small talk, and always refers to me as Miss. I assume it's because he forgot my name but wanted to be polite. I almost never see his girlfriend after the first night, but occasionally I can hear him talking to a lady in his apartment as the walls are reasonably thin. One night, about 3 months after Sam moved in, my boyfriend is spending the nights, and we were watching movies on the couch. It's maybe 11:30 p.m. The back of the couch is against the wall I share with Sam, and we hear some banging noise. My first thought is that him and his girlfriend must be getting it on. Boyfriend and I laugh and turn the volume up a bit to drown them out. Then, in addition to the banging, the neighbors begin to scream. We can hear objects being thrown, glass shattering. The words are muffled, but there's distinctively anger and crying going on. My boyfriend, Jim that he is, steps onto the semi-shared balcony and in his loudest voice heels over without crossing on the Sam's balcony. "Everything okay in there?" The girl opens the sliding door on Sam, sight a minute or two later, and says sorry about that. So we leave it alone. I'm concerned, but we have no idea what actually happened and decide to go to bed. Big mistake, I know. I wake up around 3 a.m. to more screaming, but my boyfriend refuses to wake up, and I'm not about to take my 5-foot self to break up whatever is going on at 3 a.m. I considered calling the police, but was so drowsy, I convinced myself I dreamed it. I deeply regret that decision. The next morning, I woke up to some terrible personal news, an entirely unrelated death of a friend, and pretty much put the events of that night on the back burner. I didn't forget, but it also wasn't on my mind. Fast forward about 2 weeks. It's a warm day, and I'm outside reading a book in a robe, bra, and shorts. I'm going to chair the faces away from Sam's apartment, so I can't see his side from where I am. I'm deep in my book, when suddenly I get a tap on the shoulder. Sam is standing behind me and asked if we can talk for a second. This man has already crossed an albeit invisible line by coming on my side of the balcony, but I also can't get to my door without physically moving him aside. So I asked him what's going on. He told me it was his birthday and asked if I knew where to get some Mary Jane because I seem like a girl who knows how to have a good time as we live in a state where that stuff is legal. I told him that I'm sure Google would provide the best dispensary in the area, but I personally didn't have any. He proceeds to tell me how drunk he got last night, and at this point, I'm itching for an exit. As I start to move as if to signal I'm done talking, he reaches out from my shoulder and tells me he hit and scratched my car last night because he was driving very, very wasted. Remember his massive truck? He says all of this with a smile on his face, almost laughing. I'm surprised, but mostly when I get away from him because my creep senses are starting to tingle, and I don't want to blow up at him for hitting my car. He says he'll send me his insurance info if I give him my number, and thankfully, I knew that would be a bad call. I made a bad, nervous joke about knowing where he lived and said if the damage was bad enough, I would knock on his door to get his insurance. He counters by saying he will leave a note with his info on my door. He retreats from the balcony while also saying he'd prefer to just pay me cash and not involve insurance. I give it an hour or so, and then I head down to assess the damage. I did this because I didn't want to walk down at the same time as him and risk having him follow me. Sure enough, there are 2 long new scratches on the driver's door and knock deep, just kind of superficial or worthy of a call to insurance immediately. I really just didn't want to get involved with him in any way, so I decided I could deal with the scratches. But this little event has kind of shaken me. At this point, I knew something was off with him. Nothing unusual happens as far as I'm aware this night. The next day is Saturday, and as I had to work the next day, I'm home alone, watching some action, a movie, and it's around 11 p.m. I'm on the sofa with my cat curled up on me, and the movie is relatively loud, so it takes me a little while to register this banging noise coming from the hallway of my apartment building. I honestly only noticed because my cat had woken up and got all puffed up and freaked out. I turned down the volume of the film, and suddenly, the banging is getting louder and louder. And just as I stand up, I hear the 5 words no one wants to hear coming from their door. Open up. It's the police. My stomach dropped to the floor. I had lied to Sam the day before. I totally did have some ganja on me, and I had smoked a joint outside on the balcony, the part furthest away from Sam's maybe 20 minutes before. I'm totally panicked, high as a kite, and trying to control my breathing so I don't immediately come off as suspicious before I answer the door. I remember checking the people to see a close-up of a cop's face, and then open the door, coming face to face with 6 officers, all with guns drawn. I'm about 0.5 seconds away from completely peeing my pants in fear, still convinced I'm somehow in trouble for smoking a joint. The officer who seems to be in charge can sense instantly the level of panic, and he says, "Ma'am, you're not in trouble. We need to speak with you about your neighbor. Can we come in?" At this point, I'm reeling, and my whole being is tense. I let the cops in, but my heart hasn't moved from my throat. The policeman in charge asked me about any interactions with Sam. I told them I barely know him, that he just lives next door, moved in a few months ago. I asked why they needed to be in my apartment. I'm scared, but also I don't typically get along with cops, and I have the right to know why 6 of them practically waved their guns in my face. The lead officer proceeds to tell me that Sam was a bad guy. He apparently beat his girlfriend so bad the night prior that she's now in the ICU for her injuries. They also told me Sam had a gun and had barricaded himself in the apartment next to mine. They said they had spoken to my building manager and knew my place had access to his balcony, and they needed to use it. Then they asked me to go into the bedroom and lock the doors and turn the lights off. The next 30 to 45 minutes were complete torture. In my panic, I left my cell phone on the kitchen counter and had to sit in my room, just listening to the commotion. No shots were ever fired, but there was a lot of yelling and what sounded like things being thrown. Eventually, after what felt like a lifetime, the main officer knocked on my door and told me that Sam had been arrested and thanked me for letting them use my apartment. They asked me questions for maybe 15 more minutes and left. I wish this is where the story ended. There's a bit more. In the days following Sam's arrest, I became even more panicked about him coming back to the apartment building, worried about retaliation. I hadn't said anything to the police to technically incriminate him. I had proof of nothing except his word that he was the one who scratched my car, but I did tell them about the night my boyfriend and I heard them fight. About 5 days later, Sam reappeared at the building as I was coming home from work one evening. He tried to approach me, but the elevator shut just as he was running to catch it. My whole body got tense, like the feeling when you come this close to getting in a car accident but narrowly avoid it. I stayed off my balcony entirely from this point and always kept the curtains closed. We didn't speak or rarely see each other at all for another few weeks, and then had our final interaction. Sam stopped me in the parking lot one night, running after me as I was about to get on the elevator. He begged me to tell him why I let the cops in that night. I told him the honest truth, but I was stoned, didn't know what to do, and had a bad history with cops. This is all true, and again, I was concerned about him trying to retaliate. He then got pretty upset and kept trying to repeat the question, obviously wanting a different answer. When I couldn't give him one, he then offered me $3,000 to testify as a character witness on his behalf. Because I knew him and knew how he really treated women, I was speechless and very freaked out. He told me his hearing was the next Thursday morning, and he asked if I could show up. I was like a deer frozen in headlights for a moment, and then somehow got out of there after mumbling a string of words that were most likely incoherent. The Wednesday night before his trial, I came home from work and my cat was acting kind of weird, like something had just booked her and her tail was all puffed out. I kind of shook it off, but I noticed through the curtains that there was something taped to the outside of my sliding glass door. Apparently, Sam had left a post-it with his phone number and name, and underneath, "I'm counting on you." Needless to say, I never showed up. I took a photo of the post, had grabbed my cat, locked all of my doors, and stayed at my mom's house for about 5 days after that happened. I did phone the police to let them know he had been on my balcony again, but they never followed up with anything. Eventually, my boyfriend came and went back to my place together. Everything was as it should have been. I never saw Sam again. But a few weeks later, a lady that I'd never seen before was cleaning out his apartment. Maybe a month after that, new people moved in, and things have been normal ever since. I tried calling the police in the county jail to see if he was in lockup again, but no one was able to release information to me. I'm hoping that means he's there. If he did what the police said he did. So to Sam, I will say I'm not really sure what happened. But my biggest regret is not calling the police when I felt like I should have. And my gut and I hope to God I never see you when you get out.